Hey everyone, so welcome to another episode here. This time trying out sketching a tank, something with tracks as opposed to the other two vehicles that I've sketched, which are armored personnel carriers with wheels. Wanted to try something a little bit different with tracks. Once again, I'm eyeballing the perspective here, but as I mentioned in the previous videos, there's a great set of videos out there by a channel called Modern Day James, and they have very in-depth, informative instructionals on how to use perspective guides in order to properly draw perspectives, specifically for vehicles. So I'll leave a link in the description, and I highly recommend that you check it out. So here I'm starting with the wheels, and then again, once I find something that I like, duplicating it and then adjusting the perspective, and then erasing the parts that I no longer need. So I'm really liking this process right now. I'm currently really digging the land vehicles, the APCs, and this time tanks. I'll probably do another tank after this one, but at some point I'll probably do like naval vessels, like frigates and aircraft carriers, and probably even like aircraft. But yeah, I think for the next at least one or two more, I'll probably keep exploring the land, military inspired land vehicles. Find that I'm hitting a groove, especially with this last one here, so gonna keep going. And yeah, so this channel is really just me recording myself doing things that I like. So currently, as opposed to it being more of like a I guess more of a instructional channel, it's really sort of more like a vlog, sort of like an art journal for me and for people to see, I guess. And hopefully it's something that you like as an audience. So you'll catch me really doing things that I just feel, and kind of just going with the flow of what I feel like doing, and just like talking through the process and like the sort of the thought behind it, as opposed to like really going into anything specific. And yeah, maybe it'll evolve into something like that, but for now I'm really liking this sort of like therapeutic vibe of like just recording my process and making art and like sort of like waxing philosophical about it. And yeah, because like I draw pretty much every night, and I use it to kind of wind down for the day. Art has always been something that I've enjoyed since I was a kid, so it's something that I still use just to enjoy, like people play video games and watch shows, and I definitely do those things, but art is something that I enjoy, like as a pastime, and it's something that really I feel is like meditative and clears my mind, especially if it's something if it's using a process that I'm quite familiar with, that I can sort of just like go with the flow on. I find that it's kind of like a very meditative and sort of like a stress relief. So yeah, I think this channel for the most part is going to be more on that, and sort of like my journey as a, you know, and my progress as an artist, right? And at some point maybe there'll be some like videos specifically, you know, talking about instructionals and sort of like specific techniques. You know, and if you guys see something that you like that I'm doing that you want me to elaborate on or expand upon, let me know. And you know, maybe I'll do some more like tutorial-y kind of videos. And at some point I'll probably go into environment art, which, you know, I think takes a little bit more of an involved process, at least for what I do with it. Typically I use Unreal Engine and you know, other rendering tools to like really help out with the composition and the lighting. And I also use, like what I've mentioned before, like using 3D to block out the foundational elements to help out with the perspective a bit. So at some point I'll probably go into that, but I find that, again, like vehicles are really something that's quite enjoyable for me at the moment, but at the same time it's also quite like simple to record, right? It's only using Photoshop, and yeah, it's kind of like a good way to kind of get your feet wet, I guess, when it comes to creating you know, a YouTube channel. So yeah, like with this piece, you know, I'm starting to feel good about like the silhouette and the overall shape language. I'm going into the turret, you know, kind of like the thing that's really cool about tanks is that like the main body can like point towards one way, but then have like the top point towards another way, which creates like a really interesting composition, right? And not only does it have that head that, like, you know, it's like a separate piece from the main body, but it also has that turret, which is like, you know, it does follow that headpiece, but it can also like rotate on its own, at least like vertically, right? So I think tanks are like extremely interesting vehicles. And there's like so much that you can get out of, you know, playing with it. So I'm quite pleased with like how the composition of this piece is turning out. So yeah, now I'm quite satisfied with the external shapes, and adding some more like pieces on the top here to kind of like break up that symmetry, right? Adding some sort of like, you know, some offset to the design to make it a little bit more interesting. You know, like I love the idea of like asymmetrical details, where I think like a nice balance of like symmetry, sort of like the primary the primary shapes are like symmetrical, but then having like secondary or tertiary shapes that are not. And I think that usually creates very, very interesting looking designs. And I'm trying to incorporate that here. Yeah, kind of going back again to, drawing every day. I try to draw at least 30 minutes a day, even on days that I don't really feel like it. And I find that that's really good advice especially for aspiring artists, because art is hard. Art is one of those things that has a very, very steep learning curve. And for things that have steep learning curves, consistency is really the key to getting better, right? And I'm not saying that I'm like amazing at this. Like I said, I am still trying to improve, and I think that's really one of the cool things about art, is that you can't stop improving, right? There's like so many different mediums, there's so many different styles that you can get into to get better at. So I think being an artist is sort of like you kind of have to embrace being a lifelong student, right? And it kind of takes that like certain level of I guess humility to keep improving. Yeah, I think these videos too kind of like expose some of my vulnerabilities. Like you'll see me like trying out ideas, it doesn't work, and going back to erase it, and you'll probably see that happen a lot. But yeah, I think that's part of improvement, right? But yeah, going back to sort of like the 30-minute rule, I try to at least get in a minimum 30 minutes a night. And even when I don't feel like it, I think really the hardest part is sort of getting up and getting into your drawing chair, whether that's like, for myself, I have a Cintiq, right? But even if you only have a set of pencils and a sketchbook, I think just sort of like getting into that mode and sitting down in front of your tools and starting to sketch really is the hardest part, right? I find that, at least personally, that once I sit down and start sketching, a minute or two in, I'm like sort of in the groove already. And I find that I end up sketching for at least 30 minutes, and for the most part I probably end up like getting into the groove and having like actually sketch for like an hour, right? And then ending up looking at the clock, and it's like, whoa, like an hour has already passed. And the hardest part really was getting started. So I think having that discipline of like, okay, like tonight I'm going to draw, spend some time drawing at least for 30 minutes. And having that consistency is really the key to improving in art. And I think that really goes with anything, right? Anything with a steep learning curve, a sustained consistency really is the key, right? I think that motivation and inspiration are important, but I think that they are a bit overrated in that You won't always be motivated. You won't always have inspiration, right? But I think it's the discipline and the consistency that will really, really make the difference, right? I think that if you can make yourself sit down and do the work, even if you're not motivated or inspired, think of the things that you can do if you are motivated and inspired, right? It'll be that much easier. And I think you'll get that much better. So yeah, at this point, like, the shape's feeling really good. I've gone in and, started adding the sort of the interior details, panel lines, some wheel insets. And again, flipping the canvas horizontally every now and then to make sure that the perspectives are correct and that nothing looks off. And now again, I'm going into the shading aspect of it. And I really, really love this part. I enjoy it. I kind of liken it to, like filling in a coloring book with colors, right? Like there's something very, very satisfying and pleasing and therapeutic about just going in into some line art and just filling it in. Like I love the idea of like, doing the hard work of figuring out the design, setting up the foundation, sort of the scaffolding to the piece with the line art, and then filling it in, right, and just sort of like having fun with it. And there's really something really satisfying about that. And so now I've added also some shadowing, some darker shadows to the sort of the ambient occlusion areas, and then a lighter value shadow to sort of to hint at the light direction. Just tweaking the values, using levels to kind of get the right balance between the different values. Trying to find a sweet spot to find something that works really well and feels good. Starting to feel satisfied with this. A few more minor adjustments. And then going back in and adding some more line work. So one of the things about art is that it's not this like assembly line process where you do one thing and then you do the next and it always works the same way. It's very iterative. So you kind of have to do things in what we call passes, right? Where you do something, you take it to a certain level, and then you go to the next phase and do another pass on that. And then you'll probably have to go back and forth between these phases to kind of get the right look, because one thing informs the other, and then that thing informs the other thing, and so forth, right? Until you get a satisfying, good looking piece. One of the good techniques too, that is worth using is time boxing, right? Sort of limiting yourself to a set amount of time, because as artists, it's very hard to detach yourself, and you get caught up in the little details, and that can be a bit of a trap, right? Where you constantly have to look at the whole image and sort of assess from like the overall big picture, right? As opposed to getting caught in the small, tiny little details, which is very, very difficult to not get into. So setting a time limit sort of like really helps you kind of make sure that you get the right details where you need, right? Because you can really go on forever. Like, art is so subjective that it's never really done, right? And at some point, working on the same thing might actually be detrimental, right? Like, it's actually going to plateau at some point. So you kind of, I think, like, working within limitations is actually like a really, really good thing for creativity. So here, I'm starting to, I felt good with the values, and now I'm starting to add the paint schemes, right? And again, really, really having fun with these color combinations, these color palettes, right? Trying to go for the funky color combos, not really seen in the typical military vehicles, of the camouflage green and the beige, the desert beige. Trying to go for something a little bit more, interesting and very loud. There are some like Instagram accounts out there of fighter planes, military fighter planes, but have like these really, really interesting paint jobs. And that's like sort of an inspiration for this. Now what I usually do is I'll start off with I'll try out a color, and then I'll do a hue shift just to kind of see if there are different, even more interesting hues. But yeah, with this one I ended up settling with the first one. Wanted to go for that very red, orange primary color. Adding some grays. sort of like going back in and adding some grays to break up that monotonous like main piece, right? And just going in and like adding some different colors to the different pieces, make it a lot more interesting, break it up a little bit. And then for this one, I'm starting to go in and add that secondary color here with the striping. And the first color that ended up being applied is this like yellowish orange color. I'm using an overlay here, and I initially wanted to try I wanted to actually try a white stripe, but this layer was set to overlay, and instead of white, it ended up becoming this orangey yellow color here, which, you know, actually turned out really, really cool for me, in my opinion. So I ended up keeping it. Yeah, and it ended up really, really pleasing to my eye. So I just applied it, you know, everywhere. And that's one of the really cool things about art is these what we call happy accidents, where, you know, you do something that you never really intended to do, but it ended up like becoming more interesting or better than what you originally intended. And you know, it's really interesting how that works out sometimes. And that's like one of the really cool things about art and creativity, right? And yeah, like with the stripes, like in terms of the shapes, I went with, you know, something a little bit more forward looking, with the more directional looking, with the angled sort of pathing of it, as opposed to like just like very straight stripes. I find that they really work with the shapes, because it's primarily rectangular, and sort of having that like that like those diagonal shapes to offset the 90-degree angles of the design really, really complements each other, you know. And for the top head there, I also added some asymmetry to it, right? So the stripes don't go straight down into the shape, like it's a little bit uneven, which I think is really interesting. You know, I added some red, like very, very sparingly red sort of glow lights to the darkest areas of the head there, sort of like sensor like mechanisms. And then again, going back with that like finishing touch of the color dodge layer, and then adding like a warm, soft glow to it using a soft paintbrush. Really, really like gives it that vibrant look once again, right? That I've done in previous designs before, and just like toggling it on and off here, just to really see the difference and make sure it actually benefits the image. And yeah, I think that it does. Just really like making the piece sing, right? And that's it. Hope you like it.